This program is funded in part by viewers like you who are members of Nebraskans for Public Television.
Good evening and welcome. Juanita Buschkoetter was pretty much an ordinary farmer's wife in south central Nebraska, in a troubled marriage, a troubled family, and a troubled economy. Then David Sutherland, filmmaker, somehow discovered Juanita, I'll ask her how, and she was thrust into the nation's eye and attention. Did Sutherland tell the real story? Is Juanita Buschkoetter typical of farmers' wives? And why the farmer's wife and not the farmer's kids or just the farmer? No one better to ask, I guess, than the farmer's wife herself, Juanita Buschkoetter. Juanita, thank you very much for coming by. We're taping this at harvest time, and I know that Daryl would probably rather have you out there driving a truck than coming to Lincoln to do this. The way I've run this show for 120 interviews now is to find people who are in the media or in the newspapers, but people don't really have a chance to know. And when I asked you, I did it before the show had aired, The Farmer's Wife, and I thought, well, she'll probably be in the show, but people may want to actually find out who this woman is. And then there was this firestorm. You had more airtime in the last 2 months than I have. Did you have any suspicions at all what was going to happen to you? None
at all. We had no inkling that it would be like this. They started warning us, I think, Frontline and ITVS and the producer himself were warning us that we would probably get a lot of attention, and we thought, oh, we didn't think anything of it. And when the show first started airing, 10 minutes after it started, the phone started ringing, and it rang till after midnight that first night, and that happened all 3 nights. And we have a log of all the interviews we've done, and it's just been unbelievable. And the people that we've met, my family, they laugh at me because it's just old hat to us, you know. But so it's just been crazy.
And the mail is delivered in bags full. I've seen you sorting through these piles of mail. Do you get a chance to read any of it?
Yeah, we actually read most of the mail. The really hard part is that a lot of people are asking us to respond. A lot of people say they realize we can't respond to everybody, but I would really love to, because these letters have just been wonderful. I can't believe people relate so much, and they share so much of their life with us. And I definitely would love to respond to all of them.
When I do CBS pieces, we shoot all day long, and then they take all of the footage back to New York and they do the editing, and the first time I see it is when I see it on a television screen. Did you have any idea what this was going to wind up being while they were shooting it, or was it a surprise to you?
It was definitely a surprise. We had no idea. We had no say in it. We signed the release in the beginning, and that was it. And my family, especially one of my sisters, was very skeptical the whole time, and she said, you'd have no idea what this guy's going to do with this much footage, and actually as much footage as he has, he probably could have done almost anything with it. So when we saw it in June for the first time, it was hard to watch, and I kind of cringed, because I think anybody would if you saw 3 years of your own, especially your hard times being on film. But it was also comforting in a way that it was exactly what he set out to do, and it was, I think, a very accurate picture of our life in those times.
Was there ever a time when things were tough between you and Daryl? You were having your problems like any married couple does, but yours was made even worse because you were in the middle of farm crises, which seems to be one after another these days. Was there ever a time when you thought about just telling the Sutherlands, I don't want to go any further with this. I don't want to bear myself anymore?
Definitely. Actually, when the point when I had decided to make the decision to leave with the kids for that week, I called the producer and asked him, I said, please don't come anymore, because we have no idea what's going to happen. And he did respect that for a time. He wanted to come, and I believe it was probably about a month after we were having some really intense problems. But he was very respectful. He never had the camera in our faces in the really bad times, but he wanted us to address things, because he said, especially the audience and the film crew themselves, they could see things changing, and just asked us to address it, which I thought was a very fair way to do it. And so that was like in the Christmas of '96, and then the next time when they came, I think through a lot of really hard work and faith and praying and a lot of counseling and a lot of, I think, just looking inside, we had made such progress in our marriage, and things had turned around so much. I think the producer himself was even shocked at what a change there was, and so I think through the really hard times he respected us enough to give us our space.
I guess I would have wondered if he had some indication somehow of where your life was going, because he couldn't have written a better script if he tried to invent it. But I heard recently of a newspaper columnist in, I think somewhere around Seattle, up in the Northwest somewhere, who was running up against a deadline, and he had to come up with a story. Couldn't get anything going. And he opened the phone book and just put his finger down, and there was somebody's name, and he called him. And he said, "What's your story?" And he's found everybody has a story. I wonder if Sutherland couldn't have just dropped in on any farm and found, if not the same problems, a life very much the same and certainly as interesting. Do you think you really were a typical example of what goes on in rural America?
I think so, definitely. I've heard some people say, why are we getting all this attention? We're no different than anybody else. And I think that's the point. We aren't different from everybody else. We have so many, from the response we've had, so many people can relate and identify with so much of what we've been through. And I think, like you said, everybody has their story. I think maybe the rare thing with us is that it was captured on film, which isn't normally done. And so I think a lot of farming, and some farmers I realize were never in as dire shoes as we were in at one time, but I think so much of it they could relate to the rest.
Well, and a lot of them are bad enough off that they didn't survive, and you guys have. How did Sutherland find you?
From what we were told, we had worked so much with the Nebraska Farm Crisis Hotline in Walt Hill, Nebraska, and also through the Interchurch Ministries here in Lincoln. And the producer had gone to the convention for the Family Farm Coalition, and then also through Farm Aid, which is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I never realized that. And so they put him in touch with the Interchurch Ministries and the hotline. And I think when both of them mentioned us, he came out and he flew out. He was on his way to a film festival, I think in Arizona or New Mexico or somewhere, and just stopped by and was there for 3 days and decided he was going to start filming.
Did he have any other names on the list, or were you it?
No, he actually had started filming, I think, a farm in Wisconsin when he found us, and I don't know, I still can't believe we were any more interesting.
Did he really just stop by?
Pretty much, yeah. He just stopped out, and it was funny looking back now how being a filmmaker, you can tell you were being thoroughly examined by a producer, but I think what I've heard him say in a lot of interviews, and I guess I never realized till they were in filming, he said, I spoke from my heart and was very honest and open with everything, which was what he was looking for. And he caught me probably at a very good time, because when we were reaching out for so much help with our farming and everything, I was, I guess, open with a lot of people at the time.
Had you had any experience in front of a camera, even school plays, anything at all?
Oh, never. I hate cameras. I said after that, I'll never look at another camera as long as I live.
In the show, it was mentioned several times, but we never could spot exactly where this city was. You were referred to as the city girl, not the farmer's wife. And Linda and I argued about it. I said, I think she's probably from a city. And Linda said, no, I think she's from, what's the town that you're from?
Lawrence.
Lawrence. Where are you from originally?
I was born in South Dakota. My dad was superintendent of schools, and we had traveled quite a bit, but I was born in South Dakota, moved to Lawrence when I was 9.
So Lawrence is the city of the city girl. Well, I think one of the things that made your situation even more poignant is that you had a brother in Harvard and a sister in Wellesley, and here you are out there driving a green truck and trying to get that pickup truck started and everything. That's got to have made it tough for you to live up to.
It kind of was. I come from a family, there are 8 of us kids, and all of them are very successful, my brothers and sisters. They're all have higher education, several master's degrees and all this. But when I married right out of high school, I don't think my family was as much against Daryl, just the idea that I should have gone on to school first, and I can't blame them for that. But it's funny because since we've been married, I've gone on and gotten an associate's degree, and now I tell my kids, see, if you went to college first, you have to put your kids through this like I did.
Well, and it isn't always education that makes one effective in society, is it?
No, definitely
I think you've done your job pretty well.
Well, I was talking to someone the other day, and I said, I've gone to the school of life.
Yeah, really. You've succeeded in a media school in spades. I had my daughter, Antonia, who was 15, watch the show with us because I don't want her marrying a farmer either. It's just, It's such a tough life. It's such a tough job, and I'm not a farmer myself. I call myself a farmer. I live on what I call a farm, but I cannot imagine hanging out there like that, putting yourself on the line so drastically. I plant trees, and if 10 trees die in a year, it just kills me. But my life doesn't depend on it. My wife's operation doesn't depend on my kids' education. Whether I keep the farm doesn't depend on it. And living in that kind of jeopardy, I'm not sure I could ever have that kind of spine to do it. What is it? What makes somebody do that?
I actually don't know. It's funny because I said I think farmers are a different breed of people. I really believe that, and I wasn't a born farmer, so it took me quite a while, and I do think that I have eventually evolved into one, I think, because I think it would be probably as hard for me now to give up farming as it would be for Daryl. And it wasn't that way. Through the hard times, I was ready to throw in the towel in the beginning, but then at the time we went and we couldn't throw in the towel. We were, bankruptcy wasn't an option to us. We were never going to leave people set. We had acquired this debt and we would pay it off one way or another. But even we went to accountants and there was no way we could even sell out. We would still have debt, and we would owe $35,000 in income tax.
You couldn't even go broke.
No. So, that in itself is really frustrating, but also there is something. I said there is a connection to the land that especially Daryl has. I don't think I feel as much of that as Daryl does. He just, in the springtime, you get on the tractor and you smell that dirt, being worked, and it's just, there's something you can't explain. It's just there. And unfortunately, with, so much of corporate farms and factory farms, there's so much absentee ownership that I think people don't have that anymore. I think it's a rare thing, and I think it's really sad because I do think that's part of what America is. And I've heard somebody say, you make the comment that farmers should just throw in the towel and realize we are part of the past, and I don't think that should happen.
Well, I hope not. I think one of the other things that The Farmer's Wife shows is that one of the prime products of farms, and I'm very sentimental about this, is children. And you know that, and I know that's one of the reasons I moved out to my semi-farm, is because I wanted my daughter to grow up there. It seems to me that's a very important context for children to grow up in. And I wondered, I kept thinking about my city friends watching the show, and wondering, here are two people and their children with outside jobs that are murderous outside jobs, so that they can keep doing this job, which is even more murderous and more financially shaky and more exhausting. And I think it must be impossible for outsiders to understand what the drive is to farm.
I do think it's hard for people to understand, but I think that's one message that we got across, like you said in the film, and it really made me feel good to hear that. The response we've had, tons of letters and phone calls. The phone still rings so much. People across the country that said that they had no idea what farmers went through, and it was very educational to them. They think now when they go to the store and pull something off the shelf, they think about where it's come from, and they admire us. And I think there was a survey done. I don't remember who did the survey or what the exact percentages were, but I heard that people said they'd be more willing to pay for food if they knew that the farmer was actually the one getting it. I do think people realize the importance of farmers, but unfortunately, I think our government and all is geared more towards efficiency only, and that's the only thing that they're looking at.
Well, and even the connection between food and farming isn't all that clear anymore. I mean, there's a box of cereal that costs $3.50, and there's farmers over here getting $1.50 for a bushel of corn. What's the connection? I mean, it never comes together somehow.
Well, that's what's so frustrating right now. I said, what we got for our wheat this year, I said, I knew a loaf of bread, we went to Farm Aid, and the guy there had a loaf of bread that cost him $1.79. He just bought at the store, and out of that $1.79 loaf of bread, the farmer got 3 cents. So if we were paid double what we were getting, we'd have 6 cents in that loaf of bread. It just doesn't make any sense.
One of the surprises to me about the show, while I was thinking that people in the city would be watching this and getting quite an education, I wondered about friends of mine who are farmers, what they would think about it. And I'm not going to mention any names because I think they'd be embarrassed, but a lot of my big lug buddies, who are big, tough farming boys, grew up on the farm, couldn't watch it because it was too intense. As one guy said, I just kept tearing up. He said, I can't watch it. It's just too personal, too hard. They'd been through it. And I kept wondering how you could let this crew, how many people were there in the crew? How did they work around you, being so personal? And in your bed, in bedroom. That was.
They really had to talk for that. There was usually at least 3 at all times, usually 4 or 5, but at least 3. If anything was being taped, there were 3 people there, and we had radio mics on all the time when they were filming, and it was, they would show up 7 or 8 in the morning and stay till midnight or after, and pretty much just follow us. It was a little bit more time consuming than what we originally thought, because they said they'd just follow us around. Well, if we'd walk here or there, and all of a sudden they didn't get on film, they'd ask us to do it over again. But on the most part, and like when they filmed in bed, when people first heard that, they thought, "Oh, how could you ever do that?" But really, when what he was thinking of was that is a time when we do, a lot of talking.
It's about the only time.
Yeah, and the meal time too. Daryl hated them when they filmed the meals, but it is, a lot of the conversation is what they were after, and I see it wasn't anything revealing or any sort. So, but. They were very nice people. I mean, we had we've a really good friendship with them now.
Are you still in contact with them?
Yeah, they were just at our place this last weekend.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
There were a couple places in the show when I wanted to say, "Oh, Daryl, don't say that. You've got to go back to that same loan officer again.
Believe
you can't
me,
talk
I was
about
saying
him like that." What has been the reception now in the community?
I think we've had more support than I thought we were going to have even, but I do think some people thought we should have done this or did that differently. But the thing is, people have to remember is we're not perfect. We didn't ask to be the poster farm family, or we were talking to the loan officer, and I said there was nothing personal as much as what Daryl said against him. I said Daryl's working 13 hours a day off the farm, coming home farming at night, a lot of times not having anything to eat decent, and then realizing that in 3 months from now we could have a total farm sale, and that stress was almost unbearable. We've had to go through counseling. So the week I left was probably the best thing I ever did, but yet I could definitely understand where Daryl was coming from. I mean, that pressure was just something, unless people who have called and can relate to it so much say, unless you've been through it, you will never understand. And actually I think that I don't think any relationships are really that damaged. Daryl and his dad actually think have a better relationship now because of it even. And
that was going to be my next question, is how things were fitting in the family now, because there was some fairly blunt aside language there too, and I can understand. I hope my dad never hears what I have to say about him. I'm sure my kids feel the same way about me. And the family's stronger now than it was.
Yeah, I think so. And for my family, I think it was educational for them too. They said they never realized before how hard Daryl worked, and my one sister said, "Oh, she realizes she's been too hard on Daryl all these years." And so I think a lot of people, not everybody gets the benefit of having their life on tape to show their families, and so it's been helpful in a lot of ways.
My daughter Antonia, who I mentioned already, 15 years old, has some trouble with the fact that I show up on television on this show and on CBS, and some of the other kids in school see it as I don't know, being show off or something, I suppose. But it does give her trouble. She's had problems in school because her old man is on television. I kept wondering about how your girls were handling all of this. Have they dealt with all of this fame pretty well?
Pretty much so, yeah. I don't think they'll ever be able to grasp how much nationally, the publicity we've gotten. Lawrence, being 323 people, so small, and really decent people. All their kids, their classmates are just really good kids, and they've kidded them in the beginning about being movie stars and all that. And I think all of them enjoyed seeing themselves in the film, their classmates and that. But I don't think it's been harmful to the girls at all. They've enjoyed, I said the people have sent, some gifts to the kids and all, which was something I just couldn't believe people would do. But so they've enjoyed that part, and it just, I think, really good to know how good people in the country are. They've sat down, had to write quite a few thank yous to people, and so I don't think it's, hurt them in any way. They were ready for the film to be done as we were. I'm glad the cameras are gone, but I don't think we'll ever regret doing it.
How long was the crew there?
Almost 3 years.
3 years?
They were there for a total of 26 times.
They're family members now.
Pretty much so.
Wow. When I would tell people you were going to be on this show, everybody who had there were a lot of questions I've already asked, but everybody had the one question, and I thought about it again last night as I was watching television. They were showing the amount of money farmers made on an average 10 years ago per acre, and it had dropped, I think, down to like $1 an acre. And then there was one period when things went really well. It was like $100 an acre a farmer could expect to make. And this harvest of '98 that is our last one. It was something like a dime an acre. So everybody has wondered, having seen you go from some very tough times, economic times, to finally getting the house painted. And I think I saw a different pickup truck in your yard at the very end of the show, to how things have gone in the summer of '98.
Things have continued to improve actually since they've been done filming. My job is going very well, which has helped the family living funds. You know, if one of the kids gets sick now, I can actually take him to the doctor and not worry about it, and I can buy groceries every 2 weeks, and so things are going better in that way. And of course, with our marriage, we've learned so much, and especially Daryl has prioritized things so much more. We appreciate a lot each other and the whole family more. And as far as the farm, we were lucky. I mean, I have to say it's pure, like I like to say it was foresight and all this, you know, marketing skills that we had sold last year's crop for a decent price last year, and this year we had contracted some of our grain early in the year. So, and the yields have been wonderful this year, and that's the only thing that's going to pull us through, because I have never seen prices what they are, as low as they are. You know, we've always believed in being diversified. One enterprise would carry it through, but this is the first time. Every single thing that we're raising this year, it's costing us more to raise it than what we're receiving back for it.
Isn't that insane? I mean, if Boeing starts to have trouble, everybody gets excited and figures the government better give them a mess of money, because we can't let Boeing go under. And here we are, ready to let food go under. We can live a lot easier without more bombers than we can without bread. I mean, that's crazy. And what makes it to me even wackier, this last campaign in '98, one of our own congressional representatives said that the recent farm crisis is a blip on the screen. My God, man! I mean, when you see this kind of crisis, it's an explosion. It's not a blip.
I heard somebody else respond to that and said that sometimes a blip on the radar can be a missile headed straight at you.
Right, and that's sort of what it is. And I wonder, farmers, it seems to be, have not been very effective in politically seeing to their own needs.
Well, that's what farmers aren't used to being politicians, and that's why I think any of the negative comments I've gotten now maybe is from taking a political stand on things. But I do think that, you know, farmers are so used to we're these individual little specks scattered all over the country, and you know, individually they're going to knock us down. We're going to be wiped out, and I'm not trying to sound dramatic, but I do believe, you know, I hear 10,000 farmers will be gone within the next 24 months from Nebraska. And I think that's just eventually where it's headed. And I think that farmers do need to take a stand, and we need to unite and, you know, stop criticizing each other and just really take a stand and say, we're not going to put up with this. Most other businesses, they get to figure what it costs them to produce a product and then add on their profit margin and sell it for that. Farmers, we take whatever we're given, even if that means accepting a price that's below what it cost us to produce it. And how anybody can expect us to keep operating that way, it just doesn't make sense.
And boy, when the small farmer's gone, watch what happens to food prices then.
Well, exactly, not because our cost, what it's costing us to, you know, our inputs to produce the crops are being monopolized by corporations. Well, when that's all there is, corporations, the prices for food are going to be monopolized, and everybody's going to feel that.
If you had to do it over again, and there's several ifs, I guess, here. If you had to become a farmer's wife again, say Daryl had said, if you marry me, we'll move to Lincoln and I'll get a job selling insurance. And if you had that choice now, you could go back in time and you could marry Daryl, the insurance salesman, or Daryl, the farmer. Would you do farming again?
I think so. Even if we had to sell out now, I don't think I could ever live in town again or the city. I would definitely want to live where we are. And the only thing I would say I would actually do differently, and who knows if it would have been a mistake, but I really want my kids to make sure they go to school first. I don't think education is everything, but it's such an insurance thing you can fall back on to have. And if I would have had that, you know, in the beginning, maybe I could have been working for more to subsidize the living, so to get through the tough times.
If you had it over again when this guy knocks on your door and says, "Hi, I'm David Sutherland," would you say, "Keep moving, buddy," or would you go ahead and do that again? Has it been worth it?
I think it's definitely been worth it. The response we've had from, it's equal probably between farmers and non-farmers, and it's definitely made it worth it. It's other farmers have called up and said thank you, because it's exactly their story, and people in town have said thank you for educating us, and so I'll never regret doing it.
With all of the changes that have happened in your life, you've been on national television now, besides PBS, on some of the networks. You've testified in Washington before a congressional committee. You've become a spokesman in many ways for the typical farmer's wife. Are you still a farmer's wife?
Oh, definitely. One of the few criticisms I heard, somebody said I'm not a real farmer's wife because I work in town, and it was really frustrating for me because I thought, what do I do every night after work if I'm not a farmer's wife? I work 40 hours in town, and I actually wrote a letter to an editor, and I crumpled it up. I thought it was more or less just me getting it off my chest, but I thought, I still go out and I ride the tractor, but only after I put in 8 hours in town, and I go out and help them with field work. I still drive a truck every chance I get, whether being after work or on weekends, or my vacation days, of course, are used to do, harvest time and that. I still plant a garden, and it's hard for me because it's not quite the pride thing. I have more weeds in there than I've ever had, but it still produces, I still do all those things. I still teach, the kids are in 4-H. I still teach them all the things that I've always wanted to. I still, all the cooking and all, but it's just, now I guess I've kind of had to delegate to our kids. Our oldest ones are 11 and 12, and even our 7-year-old, we can get them more involved now, helping with some of the cooking and our...
Well, I've always insisted that while farmers are always having to have other jobs to support their habit, those of us who live in the cities are also farmers too, as long as we live in Nebraska. Juanita, thank you very much for coming by. It's been a fascinating conversation. It was a fascinating show, and I appreciate everything you're doing for Nebraska's farmers and America's farmers. I've been talking with Juanita Buschkoetter from The Farmer's Wife. Thank you very much for being here with me this evening, and I hope you'll join me here again next week at the same time when I'll introduce you to another fascinating person from this wonderful place called Nebraska.